Welcome to another episode of Nass the Pod Season 4. This isn't a special edition pod or something I planned on doing coming into today when I woke up. Not gonna lie to you, last night I watched the San Antonio Spurs on national television host the Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant returns to Austin. For those of you obviously that know, he was a one and done Texas Longhorns men's basketball great. Kevin Durant played 1 year, was basically the best player in the country. Went to the draft. Durant ends up a Seattle Sonic. They moved to Oklahoma City. The rest is history. And then the legend of Kevin Durant is born. So you would think it's going to be a heartwarming, competitive Western Conference game. For the most part, it sort of was. But, after watching the game, the Suns lost. I believe it was like 120, 109. Durant played well for the opportunities that were given to him. I mean, I think he only took like 14 shots. Pretty odd. I think he only took like 2 in the fourth quarter. Devin Booker had a pretty off game. It was just another, another confusing chapter for the Phoenix Suns. For those of you that have been following the podcast, outside of the Boston Celtics, the Phoenix Suns have been one of the most talked about teams on here. I admire the duo of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I've admired it since day one. I love the way they play together. I think they're seamless. Those of you that know, like in 2023, they tied up the Nuggets, who eventually went on to win the title. They tied them 2-2 in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs. And I'm sitting here in games 3 and 4, which, for those of you that do remember, those were probably two of the most significant, iconic games, in the Durant Booker era. And since then, it's just been a roller coaster. Obviously, they bring over Bradley Beal, the ascending dollar figure in his contract, all the buzz about trade him, has a no trade clause. He spent a majority of his career, well, not majority, he spent his entire career in Washington. I think he's only made 2 or 3 playoff appearances, only 1 without John Wall. So he's also someone that, he came to Phoenix looking for a fresh start. Hopefully he's going to be competitive. Their only playoff series last year, they got swept by the Wolves. Just a nightmare, up and down roller coaster, pretty much since Durant got to the Valley. Recently, the Golden State Warriors reached out to Phoenix, regarding, the asset that Durant is. Can we bring him over? Phoenix feels the calls. Then you look at Durant, who probably thinks he's untouchable. And, shout out to him because he's professional enough to come to you and be like, listen, I understand this is a business. The Suns are struggling. Obviously, I would, expect management to be open to, shifting the team one way or another. This is a second apron team also, which brings in the Beal factor. But, Beal ends up staying in Phoenix. He doesn't sign the no trade clause. Why would you? Especially a guy like him who spent, like I said, the entirety of his career in a conference, in an organization that wasn't known for winning. Inferior talent, management not really surrounding him with the competent pieces to uplift him and the team. Ends up in Phoenix. I'll go on record saying I thought the entire thing would just be a well-oiled machine, especially offensively. And obviously there would be challenges to put competent pieces, for defending, rebounding, grit guys. Obviously with those 3 big contracts in Booker, Durant, and Beal, there were going to be some challenges. I just didn't anticipate, especially coming into year 2 of the Booker, Durant, Beal era, that it would be this bad. So basically, Suns fall to the Victor Wembanyama-less San Antonio Spurs. Lose by 10, Durant and Paul, they're getting into it. Shout out the Legends voiceover account. They're great. They basically get every single word, phrase that any player is trash talking to another. So that's one of my favorite accounts too. I love the Legends. So shout out Legends voiceover. But yeah, back to the Suns. Right now, they are 3 games under 500. 11th in the West, 2 games back of the Golden State Warriors, who, me, myself included, I've went on record saying, the Warriors are basically a joke. This is pre-Jimmy Butler, that the Warriors are a joke. Outside of Steph, this team is not competent. They have moves that they need to make. Didn't do a great job basically developing their young guys. Like, it feels like Moses Moody's in year 10. He's still a decent player, a decent NBA player, but time is ticking. We're expecting him to kind of be the guy to uplift this roster and the young guys on that team. Same goes for Kuminga. Same was basically for Jordan Poole until he got traded. So the clock has been ticking with these Warriors young assets. I waved the white flag on Golden State. I was like, listen, this team is not going anywhere. I still don't think they're a title contender. I think now, even with Jimmy Butler, they're definitely a better team. They're definitely going to challenge someone in the West. That team, amidst all the struggles, the Draymond Green stuff, post Clay, like recovering from that, right now they have 2 games up on the Phoenix Suns. The sky seems to be falling in Phoenix, and the reason why I'm basically sitting down and talking about this is that I just don't know where they go from here. Coach Bud has come in with his volume 3-point philosophies. I'm going to get into that in a second. He's supposed to be a promising defensive coach. The Phoenix Suns are 25th in defensive rating, 11th in offensive rating, and they're 20th in net. I believe on my most recent episode, which was less than a week ago, I stated I had the Phoenix Suns in my Nass Please Don't Doubt Us tier. I probably should have demoted them a tier below in the I don't know, along with, I believe, the Atlanta Hawks and the Brooklyn Nets, 2 teams that I don't know, because I really don't know what to do with the Phoenix Suns. Ryan Dunn doesn't log in a minute last night in that Spurs game. Just very weird. De'Aaron Fox closed out the Suns very effortlessly, especially on a night that he wasn't even shooting the ball that great. Closed out the Suns late. Ryan Dunn is sitting right there. You're looking around. There was an exchange between Durant and Coach Bud. Durant is, quote unquote, on record saying, we need a guy that can guard. Fox is going by people. He's getting into the paint. He's scoring. Like I said, he closed them out. And I'm just sitting there. I'm just like, why isn't Ryan Dunn in the game? He's been your best perimeter defender all year. Like, what gives? I don't understand it. That was a big yellow flag. So I still don't think Coach Bud exactly knows what he's doing with the rotations. The past 4 or 5 games, Bol has been getting a ton of burn, which I'm actually a fan of. I've said on record too that Bol should be getting burned. I just don't know why they wait until this moment in the season. Is it an effort thing? Is it something in practice? Is it... I just don't know. That brings me to what I'm saying. Like, I probably should have demoted this team into the I don't know category of my tier, in my title contender hierarchy. The team is just full of questions. They had this bad loss to a Spurs team that hasn't even been clicking on all cylinders. They lost Victor Wembanyama, their best player for the year, with the blood clot stuff. You have Chris Paul and De'Aaron Fox starting the backcourt. Chris Paul, I don't know what percentage of players Chris Paul can actually guard right now at his age, and that's not an insult to Chris Paul. That's just, listen, Chris Paul is old. He's an old guy. There just shouldn't be, usually guys his age just should not be in the league, period. You don't take advantage of that. You have this just weirdly constructed Spurs team outside of Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, with Victor there, the team makes a lot of sense because he can just do so many things. He's one of one. If you take Victor out of this equation, they just brought in Fox. Like, they haven't even gotten clicking yet, and you can't even defeat the Spurs first game of the All-Star break. Devin Booker wasn't an All-Star this year. Granted, he's averaging 26 points, 4 rebounds, 6.5 assists. He's shooting 45% from the field. Doesn't make the All-Star game. Durant, 27 points, 6 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 53% shooting from the field. He only had 2 shots in the fourth quarter. It's just so many things that I just don't understand in Phoenix. So last year, under Coach Vogel, they were a top 15 offensive rated team, and I'm pretty sure they were our top 15 defensive rated team. They had injuries. A bunch of injuries all year long, whether it was Beal, whether it was Booker, whether it was Durant. They just didn't get a lot of time on the floor together with Coach Vogel. They go to the first round, they get swept by the Wolves. And what I am looking back on it, and I just think it was a bad matchup. The Wolves were arguably the best defense in the league last year. You got guys like Gobert guarding the rim who, he takes drives away from guys. Even the highest volume drive guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, all these guys. It's hard to get to the paint with Gobert standing there. You have Jaden McDaniels, a great 3-and-D point of attack defender. You have Ant, who has shown that he can compete and be special in the defensive end. Mike Conley, one of the most respected defenders at the point guard position of his generation. Great defensive team. Sweep the Suns. Absolutely sweep them. Booker has basically an atrocious, first 2.5 games, I would say. Durant played well. Durant still played up to par. Maybe not to his standard, but he played up to par. He still played like a star in that series. Wasn't enough. They get swept by the Wolves. The Wolves end up, buzz cutting the title contending Nuggets, and then they fall short of the Dallas Mavericks. The Phoenix Suns, I thought last year, it was just a bad matchup. I didn't think they were a bad team because going into that series, they actually, I believe they were undefeated against the Wolves last year. And in fact, one of the last few games before the season ended, I remember watching a Wolves-Suns game, and the Suns were just giving the Wolves business, just a ton of work. Going to the playoffs, you're thinking, all right, you might take the Suns in 5-6 games. Ant might go crazy, might steal a game or two. Those boys end up sweeping them. That's when the Beal figure on his deal became a lot more glaring, because you're like, we spent all this money to bring this guy in. We're paying him this dollar figure that is just astronomical for a guy that is, I think he was, at the time, he was 29, 30. You're looking at it and you're like, how are we going to build this team from the ground up from here on out? How are we going to surround Booker and Durant, two of the top 15-ish players in the league? You come into this year, you draft Ryan Dunn in the draft. That was a great pick. You draft Oso. That was a great pick. You're like, okay, we have some guys that are, can go do the dirty work, can rebound, can defend, maybe shoot the 3-ball. But those guys are rookies. It's a lot of expectations. But even Ryan Dunn has exceeded expectations. For those of you that saw him in the Rising Stars game, one of the best players on the team, easily. So I really don't know what to point to. There's just so many alarming things. So one thing I'll point to, Coach Bud has always been pro volume 3-point shooting as a team. Even if you go back to his days as a Milwaukee Bucks coach, he's always been a guy that, advocates to just shoot the long ball a lot. Booker and Durant, two of the most elite shot creators that we have in today's game, they don't go into a game chucking, spamming 3-point jump shots. That's just not who they are. They take what the defense can give them, but you can't put them in a spot that makes them uncomfortable. There's no spot on the court that is uncomfortable for them to shoot from, whether it's a 15-foot elbow jump shot off pick and roll, whether it's a 30-foot 3-point pull-up, whether it's a drive to the rack, whether it's a post-up 10 feet along the baseline. Those guys, their shot diets are just very well balanced. They can pretty much make a shot from anywhere in the half court. Coach Bud's 3-point philosophies, I think it's actually had an effect on Devin Booker. Devin Booker is shooting 45% from the field this year. That is his lowest since 2017-18 season. That's alarming. This is a guy that for the past 2-3 years, he's shooting near 50% from the field. I actually think Coach Bud has affected his shot diet. And to double down on that, the whole no point guard thing that everyone was basically preaching about last year, I actually think that might end up being some cap. This was a top 10 offensive rated team last year. Maybe the Wolves was just a bad matchup. Maybe they did need a point guard. They actually did, but I don't know if they needed a point guard to start. I think the Booker, Durant lineup was productive. Those lines were productive. Like I said, top 10 offensive rated team. They shouldn't have trouble scoring the ball. There's no reason why that team, they're 11th in offensive rating, basically in a year from hell. But that team never had issues scoring the ball. Obviously, they ran into the best defense in the league last year. There's going to be some limitations. But I don't think it was that glaring of an issue that they needed to insert Tyus Jones into the starting lineup. Now, I'll go on record saying I was wrong about Tyus Jones seamlessly going in there, running this well-oiled machine, because all in all, yes, he does take care of the basketball, but I do think teams go into matchups versus the Suns saying, listen, we're going to let Tyus Jones shoot, because that takes away from his biggest strength, which is working the ball around, getting guys easier looks. Durant and Booker, they should be having one of their most efficient shooting seasons right now. That just should be the case. But they're not. They're not. I mean, Durant's still shooting 53% from the field. I mean, it's KD. He's an anomaly. But Booker, 45%, that's just unlike Devin Booker. The guy who had an amazing Olympics, who outside of KD, LeBron, and Steph, everyone was talking about Devin Booker. Devin Booker, how he just lit it up as, he was basically Team USA's Derek White. if you need him connective passing, additional ball handler, shooter, his defense was on point in the Olympics. Coming into the season, the guy is 26, 4, and 7. He's like one of the only guys that's top 15 in both points and assists, along with Jokic. And he can't crack in, a Western Conference team. Now, I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, I do think Coach Bud's philosophies, I think it's actually impacted his shot diet. Now he's going into games thinking he needs to shoot threes, whatnot. I think last night he took like 7 threes. I think he only hit 1 or 2. So all in all, like, there's that. Ryan Dunn not playing last night, that's a huge red flag. I don't really understand what's behind that. Monte Morris, who is one of the most responsible point guards in the past 4 or 5 years alongside Tyus Jones, he hasn't played in a couple weeks. He's basically reserved right now, so the money to get him, I don't understand that. If you look at the metrics, the best 4-man lineups for the Phoenix Suns by net rating, KD, Plumlee, Booker, Tyus Jones, they have a plus 17.8 net rating. Next, Durant, Plumlee, Ryan Dunn, Devin Booker, they have a plus 15.9 net rating. Under that, Durant, Plumlee, Tyus Jones, Ryan Dunn, 14.4 net rating. And then fifth best, Durant, Beal, Booker, Royce O'Neal, plus 13.1 net rating. Now, from what this is telling me, because I actually watch the Suns games, but I'm trying to get the metrics and see if it aligns with what I'm actually watching. Durant's great. He's in every, single top 4 lineup. For the most part, Booker's in what? Booker's in the top 2. That makes sense. Plumlee, who I don't even believe Plumlee starts. Nick Richards, the guy they acquired from Charlotte, who, I'm not going to lie, I thought he was going to be big time for them. He hasn't been that great. He's not in any of these lineups except for, he's not in any of these lineups. Plumlee is in the top 2 lineups by net, and I actually looked at the defensive ratings in that span this season, and he's in the top 4. So, from the looks of it, looks like when Plumlee's on the court, they can play defense. When Durant is on the court, they can play defense. Ryan Dunn is in 2 of the top 4 4-man lineups. Why is he not getting any burn? You're watching De'Aaron Fox break you down effortlessly in the fourth quarter. Granted, he's a, all-star scorer. Like, he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. But if there's anyone that should be guarding De'Aaron Fox in crunch time, it should be Ryan Dunn. Like, I feel like that's just blatantly it's just straightforward. It's just right in front of you. So I don't really understand that. The Suns also have the hardest strength of schedule the rest of the season, so I don't know where they go from here. I honestly really don't know where they go from here. You had the Durant trade rumors before the trade deadline. Now he knows that Phoenix was fielding calls regarding him. Where do you think his mind goes? And then after that, now you're thinking, like, listen, you guys are 11th in the West. I'm thinking, like, the reason why I'm really recording this is I'm thinking the grand scheme of things. I'm thinking worst comes to worst, Suns don't make the playoffs. They go into the offseason. I'm pretty sure Beal's dollar figure, like his annual salary, I'm pretty sure the rest of his contract, it's ascending. The figure gets bigger. I'm pretty sure. I think your only answer to doing this is, if you're not going to blow it up completely, which would include moving off Booker, your franchise guy who wants to be a Suns for life guy, you're probably going to have to trade Durant. But Durant is about to be 37. What do you do with a 37-year-old superstar that's basically at the edge of the cliff? I'm not saying he's going to decline next year, but do we really know how much time Durant has at this level? You know what I mean? And not to mention, this is a year that Durant, Booker, and Beal have played with each other. They've been there. Everyone was saying that, they got to bench Beal. Well, they benched Beal. Beal is clearly not the only issue. Beal actually, on the court, has been productive. I think last night he had like 17, 8, and 6. He was playing defense. He had 8 or 9 rebounds. I think he led the team in rebounds. That's a red flag if Bradley Beal off the bench is leading your team in rebounds. Not a slight at Bradley Beal. That just shows you his competitive spirit. And Vogel, like I've said, all offseason, all last year, that he's gone on record praising Beal for his sacrifices. So Beal is not the only issue. Yes, Beal's contract is huge. I get that. But Beal's contract, like, the team is in it right now. That's not an excuse for them not to be a playoff team in this Western Conference. It's just not. This team should be a viable Western Conference team. Maybe they won't win 2-3 rounds, but that should be a team that can win a round. If you have 2 top 15 players in Booker and Durant, you have 2 Olympians, 2 all-NBA caliber players, you should be able to make the playoffs. That's just, they're only 3 games ahead of the Blazers. It's just like, I'm not even a Phoenix Suns fan. I'm actually a Devin Booker, Kevin Durant duo fan. Like, I just like both their play styles. I think they complement each other very well. I love that they're basically unpredictable on offense. They can get hot at any point. But I actually do think that, first off, Frank Vogel played scapegoat again, just like he did in LA. Fired him, even though clearly he was better with the team last year than this team currently constructed. This team's a mess. I don't know where this team goes. Bill Simmons is my idol. Everyone knows that. Bill Simmons tweeted today, I was at work and it made me laugh. Calls himself the body language doctor. He was at the game last night. And he basically tweets today in the afternoon saying the body language doctor was almost called for medical attention. The Phoenix Suns team looks like they hate each other. And I believe it. Because that performance last night was just, it was awful. It was just awful. I'm thinking hardest strength of schedule. Booker doesn't make the All-Star game. I'm thinking he has a big chip on his shoulder. I'm thinking, listen, we got to hit the ground running. Durant doesn't take north of 20 shots when their season's on the line. There's only 27, 26 games left in the year. They're 2 games back of Golden State for the last spot in the play-in. Where does this team go from here? Like, I really don't know. I'm actually just, I'm articulating this to you guys because I don't have any answers. I just have so many questions. And all of them are pretty much directed at Coach Bud because there's just no reason that this team was better last year with the lack of point guard depth, with the lack of point of attack defender depth. There's no reason this team should have regressed to this point this year in just 1 year. It doesn't make any sense. All year, everyone was telling me that Bradley Beal is the issue. Bradley Beal's the issue. He's making too much money. They should trade him. But guess what? I think Bradley Beal might have been their best player on the court last night outside of Durant. Durant just didn't get any shots in the second half for another odd reason. I have no idea why. I think we need to get away from this whole Durant is the decoy thing. Like, Kevin Durant is arguably the best scorer to ever live. I think your offense is doing pretty well if your offense just goes through Durant, possession to possession. That's no slight on Booker. I like Booker. I think he's a great player. Something has to give. Like, this team is just too talented. Too talented. You got Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen actually lately, because I was looking at metrics for the past month, he's been in pretty much like 4 of the top 5 like most productive lineups since January, like in the new year. The way I'm thinking, and this, I guess I should go into my next tangent. I'm not sure if Tyus Jones, and don't get me wrong, like he's a solid point guard. I don't think we anticipated him being able to basically endure going up against all these point guards in the West. You think about all the point guards, not just in the NBA, but in the Western Conference. This is Tyus Jones, a guy who's, he was backing up John Moran in Memphis, goes to Washington. He's starting there. He's really, he doesn't have that much experience taking on all these point guards on a nightly basis. He's basically facing a star point guard on an every night basis. I don't think the Suns were prepared for that. And his greatest strength, like I said earlier, is his playmaking. So if you're letting Tyus Jones shoot the ball, not saying he's a bad scorer, bad shooter, no. Obviously, he's not the scorer that Booker and Durant are. But if you are having him shoot the ball, if you're leaving him open, if you're forcing Durant and Booker to let him shoot, then that's taking shots away from Durant, that's taking shots away from Booker, and that's taking shots away from Beal. Those are your 3 best scorers. That's their main strength, is scoring the basketball. So if Tyus Jones, who went, I'm pretty sure, 1 for 8 last night, is playing 30 minutes, he's definitely responsible with the ball, but what good is that doing you if he's taking shots away from KD, Booker, and Beal? Like, this offense is supposed to be a well-oiled machine. The defensive, limitations, I understand that. You have a couple, decent defenders. You have Royce O'Neal who can defend. You have Ryan Dunn who can defend. Durant and Booker, they have their spots, but that's not what you're paying Durant and Booker to do. You're not paying them to go be point of attack defenders. Yes, they can play defense, but you're paying them all this money to score the basketball. And I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, Booker and Durant are both over 26 points per game. They're scoring the basketball for sure. My only suggestion, and we'll see if this works, but personally, because you're 25th in defensive rating, you're not getting enough stops, even though they had a productive January. I'm pretty sure they went 10-5 in January. You saw something start to turn around. Besides that, I think your only possible solution may be, and this may sound wild, you may need to bench Tyus Jones with Bradley Beal. So you have those two coming off the bench. They can go and attack second rotations, and they'll do well against second rotations, especially Tyus Jones. He has experience being a backup, his change of tempo, kind of reading the floor as the game flow goes on. Then you have Bradley Beal, who is more than qualified to score the basketball effectively against second units, and he was doing that last night. He was abusing Chris Paul. He had played a great game last night. Beal played a great game last night, I must say. If you have those two off the bench, you got Grayson Allen, you got Royce O'Neal. Now, I think you need to go back to point Booker, because last year when they were a top 10 offensive rating team, Booker was the one who was orchestrating your offense about 75 to 80% of the time. Go back to point Booker. We've seen two guards do this before, where they have to basically, take responsibility of the ball handling duties. We've seen it with Dwayne Wade. We've seen it with, mostly James Harden, basically the most iconic two guard to basically take mantle of ball handling duties. I think Booker is equipped enough to do that. He can run your offense. He's done it before. Have him run your point. At the two, you can either go two directions. You can go Grayson Allen and go Royce O'Neal. Both of them can shoot the ball. Obviously, Grayson's a more superior shooter. But the thing with Grayson is he stretches coverages like exponentially. Like, he creates lanes in the paint with his, just with his presence. Royce O'Neal, not to a crazy degree, but Royce O'Neal also had 27 points last night. He went 6 for 12 from 3. So, that's not a guy you want to leave open either. But my main point is you want a bigger guy, Grayson, who put on weight in the offseason to basically be a better defensive player. Royce O'Neal, who's mostly known for his 3-and-D capabilities. If you go Booker and then Royce, who's mainly known for guarding wings, he might not have the same foot speed to guard like, dynamic two guards. Like, I don't know if he can go guard Malik Monk for 35 minutes, but at least he's sturdy enough and strong enough that he's going to compete. He's going to be effective at least. Move Durant to the 3. Kevin Durant is not a power forward. He's not Jason Tatum. He's not Draymond Green. You're asking him to shoot the ball, and then you're asking him to basically be this point of attack defender, bang with power forwards. The guy's 36 years old. He is a small forward, naturally. Have him at the 3. At the 4, you can go Ryan Dunn, who is your premier perimeter defender, point of attack. Have him at the 4. You're going to have to play him at some point. You have nothing to lose. You're 2 games back of the play-in. Put him at the 4, and at the 5, you either go Plumlee or Richards. Obviously, the data is telling us that Plumlee is the better fit. They're just a better team when Plumlee's on the floor. Richards, not so much, but obviously you don't want to interrupt with chemistry and stuff like that, so I would understand why you would have Richards there and go from there. That would be my only suggestion. Bench Tyus, and it sounds crazy to say bench Tyus because I read off these best 4-man lineups, and he's in 3 of the top 4. But at least, he's not gonna, it's not like he's going to the bench and it's something that he hasn't dealt with. This is not a superstar, guy, who's, been making all-star games, been making a bunch of money. No, this is Tyus Jones, who's been a backup point guard a good amount of his career. He can adjust back to that role, and then you can give Booker the mantle again, because that's what he's done. That's what he's used to. I'm starting to think that maybe Booker lost, sight of being a 2-guard. He only had 17 points last night. There's just no reason why the Suns should have lost to a Wemby-less team. Tip my hat to the Spurs, for sure. But, listen, man, you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Prime Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, who I'm not even sure where you would say his prime ended, but it definitely wasn't more than 2-3 years ago. But in terms of just sharpness, effectiveness, like I said, he's shooting 53% from the field. That's unheard of. This is not a guy that just lives at the line. This is a guy that, these are jumpers, post-ups, different half-court actions, and the guy is still playing and scoring at a very, very, very peak 1% level. And I just don't think the Suns are taking advantage of that. And my whole reason for this is that if the Suns don't turn this around, I think they're going to trade Durant. And I think Durant knows that. And that would be sad to see. That would just be sad because Durant has just been looking for a home. He wanted to stay in Brooklyn. It wasn't, his fault about the COVID stuff, the Kyrie stuff, Harden leaving early. That wasn't his fault. And then he ends up in Phoenix, team up with Devin Booker. And, they make the CP3 trade, which looking back on it, it's just a crazy trade, crazy transaction. And then DeAndre Ayton, which put the nail in the coffin. You're looking at it, the Suns could be with Kamara, who's been one of the best defenders in the league, Toumani Kamara, and they could be with DeAndre Ayton. And they'd be fine with Durant and Booker. Their offense centered around those two. They would be fine. And Chris Paul basically riding off into the sunset, running this team. And I think that actually played a part in why Durant and CP got into it last night, is that CP was in Phoenix. They go to the finals. Durant comes in a couple years later. They lose in, the second round. Had a chance to lose in the first round. Kawhi gets hurt. They luck that out, get to the second round. They go down 0-2 to the Denver Nuggets. Then they tie it up 2-2. They lose CP3 to an injury. And that was the last we saw of CP3 in a Phoenix Suns uniform. That offseason, they move off of him and bring in Beal. And it's been a roller coaster ever since. So I think, there's some pettiness with, Chris Paul and the Phoenix Suns organization. He probably feels like the acquisition of Durant probably had something to do with his exit. It's a year off of him making the finals with Booker, with Ayton, with Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, campaign, that crew. Looking back on it, the Phoenix Suns just made unnecessary moves. And the worst person I feel bad for is Devin Booker. I know he hasn't played up to par, but the guy's still 26, 4, and 7. And I think he's actually having a down year, especially shooting the ball. He just hasn't been that great. Personally speaking, I think the sky is falling in Phoenix. A lot going on. There's a lot going on in Phoenix. And I think that loss last night, warranted a video like this. I wasn't even supposed to do this, but Phoenix it was that bad. It was that bad last night. It was really, really bad. Really, really bad. That's all I have to say about the Phoenix Suns. It was a tough game to watch last night. I just feel bad for Durant. I feel bad for Booker. It's tough. It's tough. The Western Conference, the uptick in level of play has been evident. It's been there. You're seeing it with teams like OKC Thunder, first in the West. You're seeing it with Houston Rockets, still a top 5 team in the West after being basically the bottom last year. The Trailblazers, like I mentioned last episode, they've been turning things around. The West has come around. There's just no reason for a team that's centered around 2 top 15 players for them not to make the playoffs. And now what do you do this offseason? You trade Durant? What's his package look like at age 37? These are just things you got to ask yourself, because if they don't make the playoffs, there's going to be buttons that need to be pushed. And what does that say about the future of Booker? They move off Durant. Is Booker still a Suns for life guy? I know his dad, Melvin, went on record, I think around All-Star break, saying we want that Kobe, that Dirk-like, tenure to stay with one franchise. But that's, Devin Booker is 28 years old. When is it going to be time to be able to compete for a championship? Because he hasn't played in a Western Conference Finals since 2021. I think he hasn't been back there. So a lot of questions to answer in the Valley, but appreciate y'all tapping in for a special edition of Nass the Pod. I'm gonna try and do this more often, but I'm glad I sat down and got this off my chest, because it was bothering me in the afternoon. I was just like, dude, this team is too talented, and they gotta figure it out. They just gotta figure it out. But thanks for tuning in to another episode. See y'all later.